Okay, for this pattern we're going to cast on 41 stitches instead of 40, and I'm going to do a long tail cast on because it's faster and smoother. And you'll recall that we're going to start with a generous yard or meter of yarn, and that's the tail. The tail is sitting under my index finger, and my thumb is going to catch the yarn from the ball, and my last two fingers are going to hold the yarn steady. So to begin, I'm diving in from the top, go up the thumb, pick the thread up from the finger, and that's made 2 stitches. And remember, we're going to rest them onto the barrel of the needle, not on the tip. Now up the thumb, down the finger, pick the loop. Up the thumb, down the finger, pick the loop. Up the thumb. And once you get used to this, you can actually do it. You'll find that you'll be able to do it quite quickly. So we're going to put on 41 stitches and knit 3 rows. Before we actually get started with the pattern, there's a couple of extra things that you're going to need, and one of the most important is a row counter. This is a very common row counter, and it just slides onto your needle, and you just rotate the disc to keep track of the row that you've completed. Another one is this little gadget. It's actually called a tally counter, and I like to keep it on my thumb, and you just press this little button for each row that's been completed, and that button clears it out. We're also going to need these stitch markers, and because this pattern can be confusing as to which is the right or the wrong side, I like to put a little pin or something on the right side of the pattern of the work, just so that I can keep track of which direction I should be knitting in. If you don't want to do that, what you can do is, this tail tells you that this is the front of the work, so you can simply mark your pattern with a tail here, if you like. That will remind you that this tail, when you have the tail is in this position according to the pattern, that's the front of your work. Okay, we're going to look at the pattern before we start actually working. We've already we've casted on 41 stitches, so we've knitted 3 rows. And this is very typical of a pattern. You'll see this big red square stands out quite predominantly. This is a repeat, and if you read this, it says repeat pattern highlighted in red, which is an 8-stitch pattern. You can see that there's 1 to 8 stitches. You're going to do that 4 times in each row. To look at this pattern, you'll see we have row 1, row 2, row 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And this also says that you're going to repeat rows 1 to 8 7 times, and that will give you a dishcloth that is quite square like this. The reason that we have the numbers in opposite sides is that when you read your pattern, you're actually going to be reading it in the direction that you are knitting. When you're reading, obviously normally we read from left to right. However, for this first row, we are going to be following this from right to left. The second row, we are going to be following it from left to right. The third row, from right to left. The fourth row, from left to right. We're doing this because we're actually following the pattern in the direction that we're knitting. An industry standard is that you have these blank squares and the dots. The blank square means that you're going to knit that stitch. The dot means that you're going to purl that stitch. The blank square means that you're going to knit that stitch, and then you're going to purl, 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 knit, knit, knit. With this square that's highlighted, we're going to knit, 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 purl, 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 knit 5 stitches, And it says here, remember, that you're going to repeat that pattern 4 times in each row. So once we've done that stitch, we're going to go back to here and purl, 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 knit 5, purl, 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 knit 5, purl, 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 knit 5, and that's the 4 that we've done the 4. Now we go to finish up the row. And if you look at the bottom, there's a little key that says that blank square. On the right side, that's going to be a knit stitch. However, when you're doing your purl row, which is the even numbered rows, it's going to be purled. And from the right side, this is going to be, you want to knit it on the wrong side and purled. Okay, so we're going to actually start knitting and following the pattern. Row 1, we have 3 knit stitches, and if you remember, that was the border that we had been doing before. So we're going to knit those 3 stitches, and I'm going to put a marker here, which is what we had done in the last one. And now the pattern says to purl 3 stitches. So I'm going to purl. Remember, purling, you're going to go down and you're wrapping the yarn in the same direction. Slip and take that off. Knit 2. I'm sorry, that was purl 2. Purl 3. And now the pattern says knit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Knit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now to keep track of the pattern, I've completed that one pattern, so I'm going to put a marker here, so it's going to be easier to keep track of the pattern once I start following it afterward. And now I'm going to repeat that pattern again. Purl 3, knit 5. Now that pattern is completed, so now I'm going to put another marker there. And again, we're doing another repeat of that pattern. Purl 3, and knit 5. I've completed that pattern, so I'm going to put another marker there. And you can very easily see that with the markers, it's easy to see that we have completed that pattern 1, 2, 3 times. And remember, the pattern said to do that 4 times, so now I'm going to do one more. Purl 3, and knit 5. Okay, I've completed that pattern, so I'm going to put a marker there. Now that we've completed these patterns, now we're going to follow the rest of that row, which again now is purl 3, and I have that's 6 stitches left, and I have 6 stitches on my needle. So we're going to purl 3, and I'm going to put a stitch marker there because this is actually doing the garter stitch along that side, and that is going to, so I'm going to put a marker there just to remind me that we're doing that garter stitch. And the last 3 are knitted. Okay, I've completed row 1, so I'm going to go to my row counter, and I'm going to change this to, oh, I guess I have this upside down. I'm going to change that to 1. That way you can see it's row 1 has been done. Now for row 2, when you're on the wrong side, we're starting with 3 dots. On the wrong side, we're going to knit those 3 stitches. Actually, we're going to knit 6 stitches. We have the 3 stitches in our little border that we're doing, and 3 stitches before we get to this repeat pattern. So I'm going to knit a total of 6 stitches. So this is knitting in that border. Let's transfer my marker to the other needle, and this is knitting part of the pattern before we get to the repeat. Now I've transferred my marker because now I'm coming up to this repeat pattern. On the wrong side, it says to purl. So now I'm going to purl 5 stitches. And because we're on the wrong side, that dot means to knit. And so we're going to knit 3 stitches. And there's my marker to tell me that I have completed that repeat pattern. So now I'm back to the beginning of the repeat pattern, and the blank says to purl. So I'm going to purl 5. And now the dot says to knit because we're on the wrong side, so we're going to knit 3. And again, I've come to the marker to tell me that I have completed the repeat pattern. Transfer the marker, and now I have to purl 5. And again, that dot is telling me I'm on the wrong side, so I'm going to knit 3. And that completes one more pattern. Transfer the marker, purl 5, knit 3, so that completes that repeat pattern. And again, I'm still at the 3 dots, so that is knitted as well, 3 stitches. And I'm going to change my counter to 2. Maybe just rearrange this the other direction. Okay, now I have completed row 2. And now we're going to do row 3, and again we're back to considering what this blank means for the right side. And on the right side we're going to knit. So we're going to knit 3 stitches. And that finishes that little border that we're creating. So I'm going to transfer my stitch marker, and now we're into the repeat pattern. And on the right side, that dot means we're going to purl. So we're going to purl 3 stitches. And knit 5. The repeat pattern is done, so I'm going to transfer my stitch marker from the left to the right needle, and we're back to the beginning of the repeat pattern, which is purl 3, and knit 5. Pattern completed. Transfer the stitch marker, purl 3, knit 5. Repeat pattern completed. Transfer the marker. Start again the repeat pattern. Purl 3, knit 5. Pattern complete. Transfer the marker. Now row 3, we're going to purl 3 and then knit 3. Purl 3, transfer the marker, and knit 3. Now before I do anything else, I'm going to change my counter. Row 3 is done. Now this is the right side, so I'm going to take this little pin and I'm going to clip it on the front. So I know that this is the right side of the work. Oops. These pins don't work very. There we go. With the stocking stitch dishcloth, we talked about the difference in being able to see the knit stitches and the purl stitches to tell you which is the front and which is the back of that dishcloth, of that piece of work. But here we are doing both knit and purl on the right side. So here you can see these are the knit stitches, but they're smooth like that little K, remember? And here's the bump. So when you see this, you know that these are knit stitches, and you know that these are purl stitches. Okay, we've completed rows 1, 2, and 3. Starting row 4, we have the dot. The dot on the wrong side means that you're going to knit 3, and the blank on the wrong side means that you're going to purl. And in the repeat box, you can see it's all blank, so you're going to purl 8 stitches. Transfer your marker, purl 8 stitches, transfer your marker, purl 8 stitches, transfer your marker, purl 8 stitches, transfer your marker, and then you're going to knit 3 stitches, and that's row 4 completed. And now you can see that row 5, the pattern is alternating and slightly different. So you're going to continue rows 1 to 8, and after row 8 we're going to put in a lifeline. Okay, we're going to put in a lifeline, which is basically putting a cord into your line of stitches so that if you have to rip back your work because you've made an error, it's easier to find one solid line that you had worked on which is correct. So I have finished row 8 of this pattern, which is completing that first pattern. So now I'm going to put in the lifeline. I have secured the cord with just a couple of stitches so it doesn't fall off, and I'm going to take my needle and I'm just sliding the needle in through each of the stitches on the needle. If your stitch marker is big enough that you can get it through, then by all means put your needle through the stitch marker as well. So I'm going to go through all of the stitches on the needle for the entire row. And if you make a habit of doing this after the pattern is completed, you don't have to try to figure out later of to what row you put the lifeline in. I prefer to put it in after a wrong side row, but by all means mark your pattern with an L as to what row you have finished and where you've put the lifeline in. So I'm just going to finish the whole row with this cord. And when you start knitting, you may find that it might be a little bit tight because you've got that extra cord in there, but just work through it and make sure that you only knit the stitch and leave the cord in the stitches that are on the needle. So I'm just going to finish this up. And I will show you what it's like once how we're actually going to use the lifeline. Okay, and I'm going to put this through the last 3 stitches. And I'm just going to do a little bit of a knot here just to secure it, just so that it doesn't fall out of the other end. Okay. And now, because I've finished row 8 of our pattern, just pull that up a little bit. You recall that the pattern says your instructions say to repeat the pattern of 1 to 8 7 times. Pull that in a little bit more. Okay. Now that I've finished row 8, I'm now going to go back and start row 1 again. And row 1 is knit 3. So I'm going to be careful to only knit my stitch but not pick up that cord, and make sure that I'm leaving it down at the bottom. And my stitch marker only fits the needle, so I'm going to transfer it. Now I have to purl 3. And you can see that the lifeline, and then knit 5. And transfer my marker. That's the first pattern done, which of course has to be repeated another 3 times. So once I've started knitting the next row, you can see the lifeline is in the row that we had previously finished. So I'm going to finish a couple of rows and then we'll see what happens if we have to utilize the lifeline. Okay, I continued working, and you can see here that my lifeline is intact, and just after that row I've discovered I've made a mistake. So the easiest way to go all the way back, instead of unknitting each row at a time, I'm just going to pull the straight off the needles. Yes, that seems a little bit scary, but But this is the advantage of having the lifeline. So now I'm just simply going to pull all this undone. So all of the mistake that I've done, all the work that I've done since that lifeline, now that I'm down to the row that has the lifeline on it, I'm going to start picking up my stitches. And because we're going to be starting to knit from the other end, I'm going to start picking up stitches here. And so now it's just easy. First of all, it's easy for me to find all the stitches, and secondly, just simply to pick them up. So you can just rip the whole thing right back, or rip them as you're putting them onto the needle, whichever way works best for you. Now that I have to rip back down to this, I'm still going to leave that lifeline in place, because if I make a mistake again, I still have the lifeline in place, which is going to save me from having the problem of having to put it back in again. And it's only when I've completed the next 8 rows, which completes the pattern, that I will take out this lifeline and put it in the second, replace it to the end of the pattern. Or you can simply put in a fresh lifeline in that second pattern and leave this one in place. And this is where you can see how this stitch is sort of starting to slip down. If I didn't have my lifeline in place, we'll just zoom that in a little bit. This is where it makes a difference to have this is where you can see it makes a difference to have the lifeline, because that stitch is starting to collapse into that stitch below. So if I hadn't put in the lifeline, I would have to start rebuilding stitches or picking up stitches, because this is sinking into the other one. So I'm just going to carry on picking up all these stitches back onto my needle. And if you had large enough stitch markers that your needle and cord went through, then your stitch markers are going to be in place. But mine were a little bit too small, so when I start redoing this row, I'm going to have to put my stitch markers back into place. And so when we have all this back on, remember that we put this in after row 8 of the pattern. So now I'm going to go back and start row 1 again. And as I'm doing row 1, I'm going to put my stitch markers back in according to the pattern. And you may find that some of your stitches may be turned in a slightly wrong direction, but as you're knitting, you can make sure that you have them laying in the correct direction, and I'm going to show you that now. And there's the last one. Okay, so I'm now going to, because I had been counting my rows that I was doing, I'm now going to make sure that I go back to my row counter, and I'm going to put this back to row 8, so I don't have to try to figure out later what row I had actually ended on. I'm going to zoom this out a little bit. Okay, row 1 is knit 3. So now I'm just going to carry on back and redoing row 1. And again, I'm knitting the stitch but not picking up that cord. And the stitches, these are laying correctly. Oh, what did I do here? Okay, this is a very common mistake. You can see that I have actually split the yarn from the previous stitch. So I'm just going to pick that back up. And now you can see that my stitch is done properly. The next stitch, and this is where we had a marker. And now we're going to purl. Sometimes you may find that your stitch has been turned this way. So if you find that you don't have this little leg laying in the front, I'm just going to pick that up and lay it down in the correct direction. So you can see it looks like this. It looks the same as all the other stitches. And according to the pattern, now we're going to purl. Put my yarn to the front. Make my purl stitch, and that line is a little bit in the way, but that's okay. I'll just make sure it gets down on the bottom. So now I'm just going to carry on with the pattern and keep working. And when I finish row 8, again, if I'm satisfied with the pattern, then I will put in a second lifeline and take this one out. And now we're going to continue with the instructions. And you're going to repeat rows 1 to 8 seven times. And then after that, you're going to knit 3 rows and bind off loosely purl-wise. And then your dishcloth is done.